Thank you for joining us on the Smile Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Houston, mom, dental hygienist, author, and life enthusiast. Have you ever thought the universe was sitting back and having a good laugh while seeing how much pain you can actually endure? You are not alone. Every single person has a story, and it's in these stories of pain and struggle that if we allow ourselves, we will find beauty. This is your life, your one and only shot to live your truth. Don't wait for someone to tell you you can. Use your story as power to break free from the past and become who you are meant to be. On this show, I will talk to people just like us, those who have struggled but fought to break free from the past so they could turn their pain into purpose. Stop telling yourself that you're not good enough and live the life you are meant for. Are you ready? Let's do this. Adapia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Katrina. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I stumbled across your keynote on Goldcast, and I was so incredibly moved by you and your story and your willingness to be so open, and I just had to hear more.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm really glad you did reach out. I've had both a wonderful and a slightly traumatic response to the video. So mostly a lot of incredible stories and messages, personal messages that people have been sending me. So I'm so touched by everyone who has reached out to me.
Yeah, you know what? Let's talk about that for just a minute. I don't want to stay on it for too long, but I loved the video and I loved you being true and honest and you letting go of all the falsities of what society says is the correct way to live. But not everyone heard the same message I did. And I can't imagine how hurtful that was for you and how that must have made you feel.
Yeah, it's been quite an experience because there's a few things. So the Goldcast video is an edited down version of a 20-minute talk that I gave last year. And it was for a very specific event called Truth Telling for Truth Seekers. And it really was an event geared towards this deep inner work that we do, and deep inner work that I do with myself and as part of what I do with others. And a lot of that inner work revolves around facing the parts of ourselves that we keep hidden out of our own shame and fear and guilt. And that talk was given in front of a live audience. So when Goldcast approached them and they said, we would like to edit the video and put it out there, I thought, wow, that's really amazing that you want to do that. And when the video came out, I had not seen the edited version. So I hadn't seen the Goldcast version until it went live. And I thought that they did a really beautiful job of creating a story, and they told the story as I told it about leaving a marriage. And you're right, a lot of people, well, it's like anything. We project our own beliefs, our own biases, our own experience, everything about the way we see the world, and we project that into the world.
Yes.
And for every, let's say, negative comment, because there's also a culture nowadays, it seems like, around the internet and videos, and it might be propagated by the way that news seems to be working today too, where you can just say whatever you want without regard for whom you're speaking to. And it, especially around videos, it's like this pain body projection of hate or anger or fear or shaming and judgment, all the things that also keep us individually in a place of fear and playing small. And when we feel that way, we're not able to really step into our full power and our full potential. And so this video was like a microcosm of a macrocosm societally, and it just so happened to be around this issue of leaving a marriage. And my talk wasn't even about leaving the marriage. Like, my talk was about making decisions that are based on what you truly want, and not living for others, but living for yourself, and finding that place inside of yourself that is your center, and it keeps you grounded and anchored into yourself. And in a way, when we know that place within ourselves, we can make better decisions and not live for others like I did.
Oh,
And
that
so
just
there,
gives me chills because it's so true. And I only read a few of the comments because I was thinking to myself, what are these people watching? I didn't even see this. And then I was like, well, okay, that's exactly what it is they have either been hurt because of a divorce, or you were living the life that they have always dreamt of living. And how dare you leave that to be happy?
yeah. Or how dare you not be happy
Yeah.
in that life that was, the have it all life. And it's hard because, I specifically did not go on stage to air dirty laundry about a marriage, because it's not like, how do you say this? You can't fit 9 years of pain into a 20-minute talk. And that wasn't the purpose of the talk. Wasn't to talk about all the ways that the marriage wasn't good. Because if it had been, then I would still be in it. Right. If I had been with the right person, if I had been where I was supposed to be, then I'd still be there. And that's the thing, is it's not about everything on the outside. It's about everything on the inside. And so because I was so lost and unfulfilled, because happiness is a word that it's a little bit of a tough word to use. It's really about fulfillment, because happiness can be fleeting, but fulfillment really is something that comes from within. And if I had been in that place of true fulfillment, I would have been able to continue growing within the structure of that marriage, let's say, because we also grow apart as people. And this is so hard for people to hear. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening are going to get mad just the way they got mad about the video. But not everyone and not everything is meant to be forever. Yeah. And people come into our lives for different reasons. And that is really difficult for us when we may believe that someone else is the determinant of our happiness.
Let's talk about what led you to the point of believing that that was a life you wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, not that it's an excuse, but when we're young, right? Like I said in the beginning of my 20-minute talk, I'm 22 and I'm all independent and don't tell me what to do. I know exactly who I am. I'm 22. I'm an adult. Don't tell me what to do. My whole life, my motto my whole life with my parents was, it's my life. Don't tell me what to do. And
hey, I got married at 21. Right? I know how that goes.
Right. You're just like, there's so much to it. We're a product of our environment. We're a product of our family. We're a product of our society. We're a product of our culture until we wake up and decide to be a product of ourselves. And it's not wrong, right? And there's no shame in this. There's no shame in what your level of consciousness was at the time you made a decision. You can only do your best. Everyone's only doing their best. And for me, looking back on it, because I had to go through months of digging it out to prepare for this speech. And it actually put me through quite a rough patch, because I was facing things I really hadn't looked at, because I hadn't wanted to look at them. I mean, who wants to go into their shadow? But I had to. And
what are some ways that you did that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the work that I do today, and I'm really passionate about this work. It's shadow work is various things. I didn't do it with therapy or coaching, although that is definitely a great approach. I tend to be a doing things the hard way person, so I did it myself in a way. And what it is self inquiry and self reflection. So it's going in and basically having a conversation with yourself, re-experiencing your past in some ways, and being in that moment but from a different perspective. So it's almost like I it was my own system that I kind of created, and it's part of what I'm going to be writing about in a book. Is I call it compassionate re-experiencing. So it's going back in and saying, who was I at the time? What was going on for me? What was I feeling? What was maybe I thinking? And not shrinking from the answers. It's contemplation, and it's deep self-reflection, and it's asking yourself questions about your motivations, and being really honest and accountable and responsible for the way that those answers arise. So a lot of it is in meditation, a lot of it is in journaling, and it's really the questions that matter, and your willingness to stand your own ground with your own past, and to let it go when it comes up, to really see it as, you know, that's who I was, that's what I knew about myself, these were my motivations, these were my fears. And a lot of it for me was my not wanting to disappoint people. There was a lot of pride in it, because I know that my parents, who immigrated from Italy, my family's Italian, they immigrated from Italy to Canada, where I was born. And it was like the just such just such a strange thing for them that their daughter would be moving back to Italy. And after they left a country that couldn't really give them or the family they wanted a great future, so they went to Canada. And so then here I am going back. So I spent a good number of months basically kind of fighting with them, like, hey, like, I'm going to go. It's going to be okay. He's a good person. He's got, he's comes from a good family, like all the reasons on paper that would allow me to go. And then when I was there, um, I was there. I was pretty isolated. I didn't have any friends that were mine. Um, and I just couldn't admit to anyone that, man, like, I don't know if this is right, because I had those thoughts a lot. And then I would self rationalize myself out of them. No, you just got here, it's okay. Maybe you're just a little bit scared. It was really hard for me to have a life there that matched my own ambitions from a career perspective, to fit into a culture that I thought I was Italian because my parents were Italian, and
Yeah.
no, I was not. And it was just such a challenge. And I didn't know how to ask for help. And I also didn't think I could. I
Why
thought I
didn't you
had to
think
do
you
it all
could?
myself. Why didn't I think I could? Because I thought it would, I personally, in my own personal opinion about asking for help at the time, was it would make me seem weak, that I would have to somehow put my tail between my legs, that I would hear all of the I told you so's, and all of those things that come from, the parent child relationship. And my parents are very formal, um, different culture, they come from a different time. And in a way, like, I really didn't think they would understand or be supportive. It always felt like a battle my whole life. And I really didn't know who to talk to, like who would understand. I, they would say the same things I was telling myself, which is this could be a really great life. Give it some time, all those things. And the more I suppressed the voice that was saying this is not right, the more it manifested through my body, through different illnesses, through different conditions, like going into menopause when I was 24, all kinds of things that were coming out in the emotional body as well. Anorexia, anxiety, depression, but untreated. And, there's certain things in multiple cultures, especially older cultures, where you don't talk about mental health. You don't talk about anything being wrong with your head, quote unquote. And maybe even now here, like, we don't talk about the impact that stress has on the body and on life. And, if somebody's in a bad mood, we may unconsciously usually unconsciously will respond from our own place. Consciously, we may look at them with compassion and wonder what's really going on. Because when somebody's lashing out, it's not about you, it's about them. There's something going on. There's something bigger going on. We just don't have the awareness necessarily to understand that. And these are all things that I've just learned over time, over really trying to understand, like, who am I? What drives me? What motivates me? What was motivating me? And going back in and just really being compassionate with myself and knowing I was trying to do the best that I could. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. Ironically, I didn't want to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought that I could grow into passion and intimacy, but that's not how it works, right? Like, the passion piece has to come first.
Absolutely.
And love evolves. And I mean, it's not that there wasn't love, because there was, but there wasn't the kind of love that we know we want to feel with another person that can sustain and grow and evolve over time. And
because
I just
that
saw
takes work, even if you have the passion.
Oh my gosh. I mean, oh, it's so much work. And I say it because I'm remarried. I married 2 years ago. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, his name is Andrew, and he is the most challenging person I have ever met in my life. And our relationship is incredible, and it's hard work. We work so hard at it, and we've had our own sets of challenges. We're two very different communicators, so it's oftentimes despairingly hilarious that we're saying the same thing all the time, and yet it lands completely differently. But there's there's something underlying it that's very different, and it's the sense of, I'm willing to step up. I'm willing to step out of my ego and look at you and see you as a reflection of myself, of maybe some pain, unresolved emotion, beliefs that are not even mine, like conditioning from our childhood, like I call it malware. The malware in our head that we've inherited, like nagging. Nagging is my mom's malware, and it's like running this program. I'm like, oh my God, there it is again. Oh wait, let me defrag, because that's not okay. That's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. And so it's this constant, it's like you're babysitting your ego and you're conditioning all the time. And the more you notice it, the more you bring it up to your awareness, the more you can catch yourself. And when you bring conscious awareness to an unconscious pattern, it's not unconscious anymore. And you can unravel it and dissolve it and move on.
I love that when I was listening to your podcast, you called the ego the accepted identity.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The acceptable identity. Yes. And there's multiples of it, right? There's like, who am I in this situation? Who do I want to be in this peer group? What's acceptable in my family? All of those pieces of the ego. And I'm not like a psychology major or anything, and there's so many people out there that do incredible work where they talk about the ego and the soul. But in my experience, for me, it really is this, like, who is it okay for me to be? And the key is this one, for other people, which brings me back around to how much we give our power away in that exact moment. Every moment that we're not honoring who we are because we're acting in a way that is trying to reflect who we want to be to gain external validation. I don't take things lightly. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so I stayed, and I stayed out of duty. I stayed because you're supposed to work on a marriage, right? Like, it's not easy. I knew that much going into it. And so I was trying to work on it. I was trying to find this sense of happiness, which was that trying to be happy with all the other things so that I wouldn't have to face that I was really unhappy inside with myself. And trying to use all the other outside things to justify to myself why I should stay. And that's what we usually do is we stay for others, we stay for all these other reasons. And a big part of it was my family and not wanting to disappoint them. Italians they're very different from Americans. And culturally in Italy, the family is number one, as it should be, truly. I mean, in terms of like the tribe, we start with our family, and family is extremely important. And so for me, I didn't want to disappoint my family because there's this really big element of making a mistake and it not being okay to make a mistake. But that's a fallacy. There's no such thing as a mistake. I mean, who's to say something's a mistake? Even today, I could look back at that experience, and I do look back at this whole experience, and I think that was part of my path. It wasn't a mistake. Nothing that ever occurs is an error. It's part of the journey. It's part of the evolution. It's part of the lessons that I'm here to learn and evolve as a human, as a soul, as a being. And so it really is a function of what was I meant to learn from that experience, and not write it off as I shouldn't have been married or any of those, right? The shoulds, that it's like this little, it's like the critics of the Muppets. They're just sitting up there and they're just, criticizing you all the time. And you should this, and you should that, and you should this, and you should that. No, the past is the past, the present is the present. I'm doing my best in every single moment, and if I can bring more conscious awareness to every single moment, I'm in my power. And with my dad specifically and my family, that was also almost like the story that was working up in my own head about I can't disappoint them and they're going to think all these things. That was me thinking what they would think. Because then the truth was, they knew I was unhappy. They could see it. And I don't know why nobody ever brought it up to me. I mean, that's like a whole other thing, but probably because they knew I would, they thought I wouldn't listen, because I would just, get in a fight, because that's what we would do. That was the dynamic of my family. And who knows? But it went the way that it went. But it's a really scary thing. It was a really scary thing for me to say, hey, like, I'm not okay. That was really hard for me. And it still is sometimes, to ask for help. And I catch myself when I'm trying to take on too much and trying to do everything myself, especially emotionally, not expressing emotionally if I'm in a bad place. And that's been one of the biggest lessons for me, has been, you're not alone. It's okay to ask for help. And building a community of friends also, and support around me to help me on this continued journey.
How liberating was it when you finally were open and honest and you said, I'm not happy, I need out?
Yeah, it was, well, it wasn't a surprise because he wasn't happy either. I mean, it, it's like, it's a two-way street, right? I mean, it had been years that we knew, and we said we would try to work on it. And a lot of things about the situation were not good. Um, he wasn't abusive or anything. I need to make that really clear. He wasn't a bad person, which is why in my speech I say he was a great guy. He wasn't a bad person, but the marriage was not good. It wasn't good for us. And it was it was this moment where it was almost like a relief to both of us. It was like somebody finally said it. Somebody finally said it. And it should probably, it went down the way it went down, but we knew. We were both trying to not face up to it because there's a lot involved. I mean, a lot of people get hurt when people break up. And it was liberating, and we had a very amicable, conscious divorce, I would say. We're very conscious of it. And today he has a baby, which is what he always wanted. He always wanted a kid. That's what he wanted the most. And that was just not going to be possible with me. And, when people say, maybe in the comments or in the video, and they're just like, oh, how could you do that to him? And I might ask them, is it worse to leave someone so that they can find their love and their true path? Or is it better to stay in misery and keep that person in misery too? What's fair?
I couldn't agree more. That is so true. I mean, look at you both right now. Because you went through that pain, you had to go through, and you had to have those moments of darkness and struggle. But in the end, you guys are much better off and happier, and you have gifts that you would have never had before.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Did you have a moment when you were like, I live this picture perfect life that almost anyone would dream of on the outside, but there's something not right? There's not something that's not fulfilling me, and I'm not living my truth. Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah. That moment is recounted in the full 20-minute truth teller talk. And it was, Goldcast grabbed a couple pieces of it in their version, but it was essentially when we went to the hospital to visit this friend who had her third baby. And there's this like Italian family excitement, all these kids, and this like, there's balloons and flowers and food. There's like all this stuff going on. Everybody's so happy. And so is she. She looks exhausted, right? She just had her third kid. She looks exhausted, but she's so happy. You could see the love of her having fulfilled a dream of hers, with family. And I was internally, it was like I was miserable, and I was sitting there going, what the heck is wrong with me? I couldn't understand it. And so I left the room to take some space, because it really felt like something was erupting, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And so I'm standing there in this empty like hospital corridor, and I see this lady come out of nowhere. It really was like, I don't know if she was real or a vision, and she was hunched over, walking really slowly. And I was watching her, and she seemed to be in physical pain, but I was watching her. My head was going crazy with all these like screaming thoughts telling me like how awful of a person I was, because here I am supposed to be happy for my friend, and I'm just miserable. And then all of a sudden it just hit me, like it just like a ton of bricks. And I realized like this lady it's like a slow death march, and that's me. I'm in a slow death march. I've nowhere to go, and I just can't do this anymore. I have to do something about it. And that was the moment, and it felt like being set on fire. It felt like my soul set me on fire, and it was a flash realization, intense, immense pain, physically, mentally, emotionally. like I crumpled. And that was it. And it was a flash of, you have to go. It's over. And it was such a strong insight or awakening of, this is it. And the next day we had the conversation. And like I said, it wasn't a surprise. It was like almost like a relief in some ways. It was almost like somebody finally said it, and it was time to move on. So that was it. It really felt like I got hit by lightning. I just crumpled. I've never experienced anything like it.
And the truth is, there's so many people who are living that truth every single day, and they never break free of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've received so many messages from abroad, from a lot of like other countries where, and this never occurred to me, but it's incredibly like, it's really amazing, not in a good way. It's just blowing my mind, because we're so privileged here in many, many ways. I think it's a privilege to be alive in general. But I'm receiving messages from women who are in arranged marriages and who are in situations where they don't have a choice. And I did. I mean, ultimately I did. We all do to some degree. They're just harder choices to make. And I'm receiving messages from all kinds of people that are just saying, you know, that they also were feeling like they were the only ones, that they thought they were crazy or bad or ashamed of themselves for not feeling like the relationship was right, or the relationship was right anymore, or what have you. And it's really a question of facing ourselves and understanding, am I happy with myself? And for me, I wasn't happy with myself. And the truth is, it had nothing to do with him. And even my marriage today, Andrew is not responsible for my sense of fulfillment or happiness. I am. And so it's a choice to be with him and to want to grow a relationship and a life with him. It's a choice. And that's a way better position to be in for somebody to know that, hey, she's with me because she wants to be, not because she thinks she needs me, and all that stuff that we place on other people, which is really unfair, because we can only be responsible for our own happiness. And if anything, we can be facilitators of someone else's journey, right? I think of it like, how can I be a clear reflection for someone else and withhold all judgment and sit in a place of unconditional love and compassion and let them be who they are? And that's the best that I can do, because I have no idea what's going on for them in their heads. I don't know enough about anyone to assume I know them well enough to know how they're going to do anything in their lives, because we're a function of the conditioning that we were brought up with, until we make that conditioning conscious and can release ourselves from it.
There are so many people who are just mindlessly going through their days, you know, with the kids, work, cleaning. If they're lucky enough, they get to plan an annual vacation.
Yeah.
But they think this is the life. This is all there is to it. We live and then we die. I mean, what do you say to that person?
If you can take a moment, if you're feeling like you feel that there's more to it, but you think that, because this is where it is. There's thought and then there's feeling. there's ego and there's soul, and the ego feeds off of the conditioning of the mind, and the soul is waiting for its moment to emerge. And if we're kind of chasing this, all the things that I should do, then we're in a place of doing rather than being. Because when we can sit with ourselves, which is the hardest thing to do, especially when we're not fulfilled, when we're not feeling that we're at our best, it's really hard to admit that. But if we can sit with that sense of compassion for ourselves and say, where in this moment could I choose differently? Where in this moment could I choose either a different belief about something? Could I choose myself? And as women, we do this a lot. We think that we're supposed to do everything for others and not for ourselves. And if we can take that power back and say, you know what, I need to do something for myself and empower myself, nurture myself, care for myself, I'm actually setting a great example for others, especially for my children, to honor themselves and to always be, for me, it's important to always be respectful of others. And caring for yourself or choosing yourself in the moments where you really need to is honoring yourself and respecting yourself. And that doesn't have to come at the expense of someone else. That's a fallacy that we have culturally, maybe all over the world, that if you choose yourself, therefore you're hurting someone else. That's just a thought. And it's a really dangerous, hurtful belief. Because you're not hurting somebody just because you choose yourself. That it's not causal. That's not how that works.
And for mothers, that is huge right there. Moms think that they have to be everything to everyone, and then they are the bottom of the totem pole, and they're the last to get love, affection, anything. And I remember one day my 9-year-old said to me, well, but you have to. You're my mom. And I don't even remember what it was about. It was something silly that, something about doing something for her. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not on this earth to serve you. And she was like, but you are. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm not. And that might be hard for some people to swallow, but it's true. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's really hard to do that because you know that there's going to be all kinds of judgment. And the thing is, and this is what I've learned after this video, because it's a lot of it there's been a lot of judgment and a lot of shaming and a lot of projection and honestly a lot of pain. It's this pain that's come up and it's getting projected onto the video because it's not me. It's not about me. This is not about me. This is something so much bigger. Because let's face it, people get divorced all the time. And I'm not saying that as like to make light of anything, because I know I tried really hard and it's not about giving up. It's not about all these things that we tell each other and ourselves but to what end? Like, this is it. We need to question our own beliefs and whether those beliefs are serving us or disempowering us. Because for your daughter, potentially, for you to say, I'm honoring myself because I'm not just a mom, I'm also a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a professional, I'm a person, right? I'm a multitude of roles, potentially, is that you're modeling honor yourself so that she'll learn that she doesn't have to live for others, and that there are going to be really important moments where she needs to stand her ground for what's meaningful to her and not give her power away to someone else's expectation.
I love everything about that. That's so true. And I love that you use the word expectation, because the moment I realized that my unhappiness was because I was putting expectations on other people, I was free. Because it's not that somebody is doing something right or wrong. It's I'm giving them an expectation. And that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to me. And it's so liberating when you don't have expectations. You don't expect that when you come home from work, dinner will be on the table. You don't expect someone to buy you something for your birthday. If those things are done, it's a beautiful gift. But expectations is what hurts so many relationships, I think, and hurts us as well.
Oh, it is the expectation is the mother of discontent. I mean, if you're ever upset, if disappointed, if you're ever in a bad mood, check your expectations, like check your 6. It's going to be somewhere inside your expectations. I love that you brought that up because that was one of my big realizations, because I was like, oh my gosh, every time I'm upset, it's because reality didn't match my preference or my expectation. And can I tell you a quick story? Because
Absolutely.
It was like a huge, it was kind of funny. Having I'm Italian, it was, my parents are Italian, so I grew up that way. And then living in Italy, food's really important to me. Like, it's really important to me. And so is preparing meals. And with Andrew, like, I just naturally make dinner. I make dinner every night. I'll have dinner ready when, I work from home a lot and he comes home. And this happened a couple of years ago. And we got in an argument because I had made dinner and he wasn't ready, or something happened where I got upset because I felt like, I'm making you dinner and you don't even appreciate it. We're getting in this argument. I said, I'm always making you dinner and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I never asked you to. And I was like, oh,
rude.
I was like, wait a second. And then I stopped the mind from wanting to go into attack mode, and I turned it in on myself, because I caught myself. This is that noticing. And I was like, holy cow, he never did. I did. And he was feeling kind of oppressed by it, because he felt like, I have to be home by a certain time. And if I'm not home by a certain time, she's going to be upset because of dinner. And so it was this like gluey, sticky mess of me wanting to do something out of love, but I had an expectation attached to it. And he was like, you know what? I don't always need a 3-course meal. And I thought, oh my God, how liberating. I don't have to prepare a 3-course meal. I can maybe not make dinner one night and take a bath. Oh my God. And it all came because I thought I came at it, well, without having a conversation about it,
Right.
But it was really like, oh my gosh, you're so right. You didn't ask for that. And I just created this whole scenario for months that was causing me upset, that I had put on you these expectations of, everything from appreciation to, this is how I'm showing you my love and all this kind of stuff. And it really came out in that moment. And it's been a lot easier since then, because I don't always make dinner, and it's so liberating for me.
Good for you. You can come over to my house and cook Italian food anytime. I'm like, my mouth is already watering. So tell me, how do you think that people can go about removing those layers, like, of societal identity?
Yeah, it's there are some really great teachers, I think, that do amazing work, and I'll name a few that have been fundamental to me on my journey. And Caroline Myss is one of them. Clarissa Pinkola Estes for women. She wrote how women run with the wolves. It's like a Bible. I think every woman should read it.
I saw that on your Instagram, so it's
oh my
already
gosh.
in my list.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. She's such a storyteller. Also, Robert Ohato, he does really great work around ego and soul inquiry, because this is really all about self-inquiry and it's like finding out who you are. And you might read or listen to like an Eckhart Tolle. There's so many incredible spiritual teachers, Ram Dass as well. There's some that have a little more modern languaging versus like a Ram Dass that is a little more traditional and a little older. For me, it's been an ongoing journey of just questioning, and I've distilled it down for myself to be this journey of inner meaning. And so the questions that I'm really asking myself are, where do I find meaning in my life? And when I'm doing something, or I want to do something, or I think about it, I'm asking myself, is that meaningful? And if it is meaningful to me, like you getting up on stage and doing the speaking that I'm doing, or my blog or my podcast, or anytime I go out and do group work, I facilitate group work as well, and that has meaning to me because I'm allowing others to enter a space of self-inquiry where, whether I'm telling a story or a lesson, there's something in it that they can use to ask of themselves, how is this the same for me? Or how can I use this? And the self-inquiry really also comes down to your desires, your deepest, your driving desires. What do you truly desire? And when you start delayering that, because you might say, I desire I desire a loving marriage, and then, so why is that meaningful? And then you ask that question a few times. Why is that meaningful? And you continue to ask it of every answer. And then you get down to a place where, and it's going to be different for everyone, but where it's, why is that meaningful? Because I want a relationship with someone where I'm growing into my fullest potential. And when you get down to that place where it might have started with, I want someone to love me, but really at the end of it, you're coming down to, I want to love myself and I want to express that love towards someone else. So it's like you're delayering through the question of, why is that meaningful? And then, why is that meaningful? And then, is that one of my deepest desires? Some people have a great desire for service. Others have this desire for raising a family, which I think is so admirable. I think it's such incredible work to raise children. And I mean, I just admire moms. It's such important work. And
we're a much bigger mess than you think. I admire the moms who really look like they have it together, because I don't even pretend to look like I have it together.
Well, you know what? I have a good friend, and actually this is a book that I would recommend for everyone. It's just coming out right now. It's called Perfectly Imperfect by Kimberly Snyder. And she really talks about this, and we talk about this a lot ourselves, around the sense of, like my picture perfect life with the painting, of keeping it all together. And we always think we need to look like we've got it all together, but really we don't. And how liberating if we could each look out and around at everyone and know that nobody actually has it all together, and not expect them to, and not judge them, and therefore not ourselves, because that's the worst expectation of all, I think, is this expectation that we should have anything all put together, or that we even should know that deeply about ourselves. This is a lifelong journey. I certainly know myself much better today than than I did a few years ago, because I've been on this journey of self-inquiry and self-awareness and contemplative practices, a lot of meditation, a lot of mindfulness, a lot of like, I continue to use this word self-inquiry. It's just really like this journaling and asking questions of who I am, but I barely am scratching the surface, and it's a lifelong journey. I'm going to be exploring who I am for my whole life and trying to be more aware of how I relate to others and how I respond. Just trying not to project my ego into a situation where it really doesn't belong, because it's like, get out of here. Nobody wants you here with your projection, because that's what happens. It like rises up and it gets in the way. It gets in the way of meaningful, authentic relationships, because it's trying to say, like, look at me. I want you to validate me. I want you to validate my acceptable identity. But the soul is just like, hey, I'm here. Okay. And I love myself.
And that takes a lot of soul searching. It takes a lot of work to get to that point. And social media is fantastic for a lot of reasons, but the one thing, that has not been great for society is, people showing their perfect lives, and then people having the expectations. That's what I should be eating every night, and I should be working out all the time and going on these fancy vacations, and my kids should be wearing those cute clothes and not looking like a hot mess like they really do. And that's the reason I started this podcast, because everybody has a story. Even if you look like you are picture perfect, you have a story that's gotten you to where you are right now. And if you think that Oprah Winfrey would be Oprah Winfrey without all the crap that she went through, you are wrong. And if you take away all of those celebrities, all their money, they're just regular people with a story just like you.
Yeah. And these are the stories that we need to hear. Stories from, like, quote unquote regular people. I'm by no means a celebrity. I'm like a totally normal person. I have a like, quote unquote normal profession. Like, I work in real estate finance. I still have a job, but I'm not so attached to that identity that, I allow it to define who I am. I'm more interested in how I show up and what more can I contribute out into the world. And so I'm trying to contribute through telling these stories and sharing these lessons that just want to come through me. Like, in the same way that my soul was like, you need to go. It's pushing me today to say, there are other people who need to hear, and there's something in these messages. All of us have a story, and our stories are also very similar and very overlapping, because we're all going through similar situations and we feel the same feelings. And until we start to share that, we're not going to be able to break through the silence of shame that's keeping people from realizing that they're truly okay. And it's okay to say, hey, I need help. It's okay to say, hey, I think I got this wrong, or I made a mistake, or I don't have it all together. Like, it's okay. And it doesn't diminish who you are. It doesn't diminish your value. It's the most liberating thing to know that you're not alone in any struggle, because you're not. And there's a support system out there for you. And I want everyone to know that. We're out there for each other, and we can show up for each other.
When you shared your story, did you ever think that you would be helping so many people?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, I can't. It's a lot to hold, like, energetically sometimes, because it's gotten, I think it's at 12 million views now just on Facebook alone.
That's incredible.
I get the shivers when I think about it, because it's been shared 100,000 times, over 100,000. And I just think, like, I don't know. It hasn't, like, nothing about my life in the normal way has really changed. It gave me a big kick in the butt to keep going out there and keep doing this and write a book now. And but it's not like I didn't get any like media calls, I'm not an Oprah. I'm not like this like celebrity person at all. Like, no, I'm totally normal. I'm a totally normal person. And I never, ever did think it would have such a big impact, but it reminds me a lot of something that I learned through a lot of my healing work. Um, and this idea that we are the medicine, like we are from like an emotional, psychological, but just like a metaphysical perspective, we are the medicine. We're each other's medicine and we're our own medicine. Um, and sharing our stories is a form of healing, because when I'm healing and when I'm opening up, I'm also creating space for other people to open up, whether that's within themselves. Maybe they tell someone finally that they've been feeling a certain way. Like maybe they just tell a friend, hey, like I actually don't have it all together. And that person shows up supportively. There's a ripple of healing. It's like a sonic wave of healing. And I feel really strongly as women, especially, um, we need to support each other more and be there for each other. Really be there for each other. Sisterhood is has been one of the greatest gifts for me in the past couple of years, where I don't ever feel like I'm asking for help in the way of help being because I'm broken or something is wrong, but expressing where I'm at or how I'm feeling or if I'm having a bad day, and knowing that I have one or multiple incredible people in my life who are going to be there for me, even just to listen, or even just to give me like a kind word back or a hug or whatever it is, an emoji, you know. And it's oh my gosh, it's so important for us to be there for each other, because we're breaking through hundreds of years of self-imposed oppression as a human race, and we're breaking through that more than ever, and we need to stand by each other's sides as we do that.
I agree. And I can't imagine all of the people that have listened to your story and were so touched like I was, where they would be right now had they not heard those words from you.
Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
It just touches my heart so deeply. And these are the things, like the people who have expressed this to me in so many different ways. You've given me the strength to face, let's say, the projections and the pain and the negativity that also came about, and to hold my light and my being, and to hold compassion for the people that were triggered. Because when we're triggered by something, it's an opportunity. Our soul is giving us an opportunity to look at a limiting, conditioned belief or thought pattern that's holding us back. And that's the work. Is, maybe the simplest way you asked, like, how do we do this, is notice when you're triggered and inquire into the trigger. Why did I get triggered? What do I believe about this? Why am I angry? And dig into that and really go delayer it. Well, why does that make me angry? And what do I believe about that? And just take it all the way down to its core. And it's going to be, there's unresolved emotional pain from something that requires your unconditional love and forgiveness for yourself.
I want to touch on that for a minute, because like we were saying earlier, everyone has a story, but it's so hard to tell it. And it takes a lot of courage. And why did you decide to tell your story to begin with?
That's a great question. It's a funny story. I was going through another, I call it like an awakening. Like, I woke up in that moment of needing to leave that marriage, which is now almost 8 years ago. And in 2017, I was going through a similar end of 2016, 2017. I went through a similar process, but this time in the realm of my career, where I was finding myself in a situation where I was so miserable. I was really unhappy. And one day I I realized like I had this hit. This time I didn't crumple or anything, not nearly as severely. But I received this kind of deja vu and this message that was like, you're there again. You're unhappy. You're living for other people. You can't keep up with all the expectations, with all of the stuff. You're miserable. You need to do something about it. And the next day, I went into my company. I was an executive there at the time, and I said, I have to go. It's like a thing I do.
Wow.
But I know. And so what that put me on was basically an ego death around my acceptable identity, around who I am professionally. And so that was this whole.
It's a tough one.
Oh my goodness. And because that's honestly, like, after the marriage, that is what I rebuilt myself on. I was like, well, I'm gonna make sure. I've always been ambitious and career driven. That's what I've got. That's my one solid leg to stand on. And so I rebuilt everything about my sense of worth on that. And so that started to fall apart, and it continued to fall apart all throughout 2017 in various ways. Like when nothing seems to work, you really have to stop and ask yourself why. Like, what is going on here? Because I was like, I know how to do this. Why isn't this working? What is going on here? And I reached this point where I thought, you know what? I need to do something completely different, and I need to do something that I've always wanted to do for myself, which was to write, because I love to write. And so I started.
You're a beautiful writer too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was like I'm gonna do something for myself. I was all happy, and I started my blog, and then I met this woman, Kirsty Spraggin, who put on Truth Telling for Truth Seekers, and she's like a 15-year veteran in public speaking, and she knew she wanted to do an event that didn't focus on expert, so-called motivational speakers, but it told the people who were telling their true stories, like these deep truths. And so she asked me to speak at that event, and so I did. That was the first time I've ever given that kind of a public talk, and it really just came about organically because I had made a decision with everything, my mind, my heart, my soul, to try to pursue a different path, which included coaching and leadership facilitation work, because I have about 20 years of professional experience in finance and investing and startups and all this kind of stuff. So I was a very well-known female executive. And so I have all of this, and all of this was happening at the same time as Me Too. And that woke me up to like, Adapia, what are you doing with your life? Like, what are you doing to make a difference in the world? And that really set me on this path of knowing that I am strong, knowing that I've learned a lot, and knowing I can express that in a way that's relatable. And so I did a lot of coaching certification. I did all these things because I wanted to be able to help people. And so this presentation, this talk was around finding that inner truth, and when you and who am I? Like, who am I really? Like, being really real and raw and super vulnerable. And it was scary getting up there.
And that's something I want to talk about too, because that was scary. It's not like you just said, you know what, I'm going to talk, and this is going to be really easy for me to prepare, and I'm not going to have a problem with it. I can't imagine what you went through. And I want to talk about that because I know that there are people out there who want to do the exact same thing, but they're not sure how to either take the steps or to get over their fear to do it.
Oh, you know, I really dislike cliches, and I dislike them more and more because I find myself using them more and more. I'm like, oh, not again. But, you know, it's like, but there's so much truth in them, which is like, you know, face the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. It's like fear is an illusion truly. And we have to go through it. Like, our growth edge is in discomfort.
Yes.
Always. That is just the way of the world. I wish it wasn't so. I wish that we could grow and evolve through only joy and happiness and all of that kind of stuff. That's not how it works. Like, we have to, the discomfort is the growth edge, not forever. I really feel like once we've faced some of the deepest stuff, it does get a little bit easier. But we do have to face it.
It does get easier. For sure. Because this is the year for me that it's like, oh, that's hard and scary. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
But it gets easier, and then you learn so much more about yourself, and you want to do more and push yourself even further. So once you take that first super duper duper scary step forward, the others are going to get a lot easier.
Yeah. And having a support system, because when you said that, it really made me think about, having a support system in place, like, even if that's just a few friends that support you, and that you can talk to and say, hey, like, I'm really having a hard time with this. I remember when we were doing some speaking training with Kirsty and her friend Deb, and we were practicing the speech, and I was giving mine, and she looks at me and she goes, oh my gosh, she was like, you're still ashamed. And she says, you're ashamed of yourself. You can't even bring yourself to say certain things. And I swear to God, I sat there like a deer in headlights. And I thought, oh my God, how do I get out of this? I can't do this. I actually can't do this. She's right. I'm still in shame. Oh my gosh. It was like, I remember it took me like about a week to come out of that, because it was such truth that I had to face. I had to go in, because the process of going through the story again and again and again and remembering it and finding the nuances, because once you open that Pandora's box, like, it's out, like, you're in. And it was true. I realized in that moment I had been holding on to shame and all the judgment, all those nasty comments people are making on the video. I've said everything of those comments to myself, more or less, to some degree. I'm my own worst critic. Everyone is. So it was me going through all of this and realizing, like, you need to let go of the shame. And that was a really hard process, because I was living in it unconsciously. And as that came up for healing, it really pushed me emotionally. And it wasn't until the very end, actually, until like maybe a couple of days before the speech, where I was talking to Andrew about it, because I felt like I didn't really know how to talk to him about, not that I didn't know how to talk to him about the speech, but there were parts of it where there was something about it that I just didn't know how to say it correctly. And he said to me, he said, you thought you were going to have this like great life that everybody thinks they're supposed to have. Go to college, get a degree, get married, have kids, get a career, travel a bit, retire, and you're done. And I said, are you saying that like the marriage was just like ticking off a box and it's not? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you would put that in the same kind of category as like owning a boat? And he laughed and he's like, kind of. He's like, that's kind of what you were doing because you thought you were supposed to. Wow. And you thought you could make it work. And that conversation with him, which I was really afraid to have, because it's weird to talk to him about me getting on stage, talking about my ex. Like, it was this whole thing that I was like, again, the lesson of opening up. Say the things that are uncomfortable and you'll get clarity. And he was the one that moment, I released so much internal pressure that I didn't know how to say what I needed to say, which was the line, which has upset a lot of people, which is, I wish I had married for love, but I didn't. And it wasn't until like the night before.
That was a line that got me.
Mm-hmm.
That was so, you spoke to so many people with that line right there.
Yeah.
And that's the line that you got the night you were talking to Andrew?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know I was going to say it. I didn't know that's what it was. I didn't realize that's what it was. I didn't realize that was my source of the deepest shame, in a way that I was self-imposing, because I know how that sounds. I know how that's going to be taken. And, in a way, that is how it was taken in some ways, right? Like I can't control people's responses. Um, and, but that was it. And it wasn't until, so this is this amazing part of the evolution of who we are. We might undertake one thing, but know that it's always a deeper and deeper and deeper journey, especially when we come up against a resistance, which I call a growth edge. It's like this point of resistance where there's something that is like, you can feel it. You're just like, nope, I don't want to look at that. I'm not going there. It doesn't feel good. So I don't want to go there. But that's exactly where you need to go. It's exactly where you need to go. And you need to face it and just like take a deep breath and like, take a drink of water and just go, okay, what is this? And knowing, and see, this is the relationship with Andrew, is that was a major growth edge for us as well, for me to be able to trust and be so vulnerable with him to say, like, I don't know how to talk about this because I can't bring myself to say that I was truly so in love with him, because it's not true. And he's like, well, then don't say it.
Wow. That was a big moment for you.
I'm
sure.
Yeah. And then I unraveled. And then the rest of last year. And then after that speech, I gave that speech and nothing happened from the talk. Like nothing, in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to launch into some new career and all this kind of stuff. None of that happened. I was still in this like ego death cycle, and so much had come up for healing emotionally for me that last year, plus I was in different trainings. I did a yoga psychology training and advanced training. I did leadership training and all these different things that, and I did start writing the book, which took me even deeper into my own story. So last year I was like in this cocoon of healing, from this process of the speech that started when I left my career and when I made a decision to follow a path that was meaningful to me, which is this path of sharing. And then I didn't think anything would happen, and then Goalcast happened quite unexpectedly, and now I'm here just thinking, I really don't know where all of this is going to take me, and I'm letting myself sit in a place of receptivity around, I'll know what to do. I'm going to continue to push forward, and I am pushing forward. Nothing's going to get me down or hold me back. But I'm also not trying to make it more than it is, because that story, even though I told it, and you've said this a few times, it's a beautiful reflection, is a lot of people's story. My words are a lot of people's words. So that wasn't about me. That was about everybody.
And we all have something that we're supposed to offer the world. We're not here just to be an executive or I'm a dental hygienist. Right. We're not just here to do our vocation.
That's right.
But look how, because that one decision that you made standing in that hospital, look how your life has unfolded naturally, not by your force, but naturally. And all of the people who have been affected and the beauty that's come into your life because of it. So many times we try to force our lives and be in control of every situation. But if we just let go and we just listen to our truth and take a deep breath and know that it's taken care of, we'll have more beauty in reality than we could have ever imagined in our dreams.
Yeah. It's exactly it. It's putting the ego in service to the soul. It's letting the soul lead and trusting that soul. And that's that soul, we find it in those moments of quiet contemplation, peace. We find it when we need it. And if we don't feel strong enough necessarily to ask somebody outside of ourselves for help or support, and I know that to be true for many, many people, just ask yourself, ask your soul, I need support. I need help. I need strength. And it will always be there. We're never, ever alone. We're not truly alone in this world. And that's been one of my biggest lessons, is I don't have to try to do everything by myself. And the more I let go, the more people, it's this funny paradox. It's this beautiful paradox. The more I let go of trying to control anything or think I know anything, the more other people or other situations come into my life that give me exactly what I need, that reinforce or confirm or show me the way.
Yes. What are some tips or advice that you might have for anybody who might be going through some similar situations?
I think if you're in a place where you're feeling overwhelmed and scared or unsure, I think the number one thing to do before taking any external action is to center yourself. And centering could be meditating, it could be journaling, it could be anything where there is a focused intention on trying to find that place in yourself, that inner voice, the inner meaning, the soul, whatever we want to call it, different things, where you can connect in with a sensation of I'm okay. And there might be a lot of mental chatter in there, but you start with that. You start with knowing that you're okay and feeling that you're okay. And when you're ready to speak about it with somebody, because it is really important, like a lot of my progress was made because the most difficult things were talking to other people about it, and facing potential judgment and whatever that is. But like finding a couple people that you can say, hey, this is happening to me and I don't need advice. I don't need anything. I just am seeking some space for expressing this, because a lot of times we just need to express it. And that helps a lot. And it gets out of our head, it gets out of our system, and it allows for some healing to happen on levels that are way beyond the conscious understanding of the mind. And so it's settling into yourself as much as possible, getting a sense of feeling that safety that is always present within us, speaking to some people that you feel safe speaking to, seeking out support, and reflecting on where you can take back some level of power, because usually it comes from a place of feeling disempowered. And we're the only ones that can give ourselves our power back or take it back. And it's not taking back from somebody else, it's actually giving it to ourselves. So it's very different. So it's where can I honor myself in some way? And it could be a really small way. It could be, I'm going to take 5 minutes every morning before I get out of bed to sit with my eyes closed and just center myself and tell myself it's going to be okay. Tell myself I love myself, whatever it is, meditate, whatever it is, and starting to take little steps that help you feel like you can give yourself your power back. Because it's all about ourselves. It's never about anybody else. It's always about ourselves. And so those begin to make those little shifts that we can take into our daily lives. And a lot of it is boundary setting. A lot of it, especially for women, is saying no without needing to say why, but just saying no. Just yes when I want to say yes and no when I want to say no. And beginning to build that internal strength around I can be here for myself, and then taking that out into the world.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know you're writing a book. Tell us about that.
Well, the book is basically going to be around a lot of the realizations that I had in all the ways that I actually was repressing the signals in my life telling me that it wasn't okay. So it's almost like it's semi-autobiographical, but mostly it's like a self-inquiry where I bring people along my own self-inquiry, and I look at the things that were signs and signals and how I ignored them, or how I was projecting this deep discontent, like how I abused my body, how I disconnected from people, how I disconnected emotionally. Like it's a bit of everything. It's like how it all happened. and very clearly realizing that I was the author. I have always been the author of my life, and then taking through a lot of big lessons and realizations that I've had since then around how we can learn to notice this in ourselves and finding those moments, and going into self-inquiry around where in your life is this true for you. Looking at the way emotions affect us, looking at how to reconnect into our intuition, knowing how to discern the soul from the ego, and getting into this. I don't want to call it a process, because I think it's really, you can't have a process of tell me how to dig my soul out from under my ego, but you can certainly, we're always doing it, and that is a process, and it's a personal process, and it's not like a 10 steps, but it definitely is through story and through self-reflection of my own, inviting in self-reflection of the reader to go along with me and allow that process to unfold while reading, and seeing how that could be true for them. And so it's partly autobiographical, partly teaching through story and experience, and that will be out later this year. So
how exciting! So yeah. You don't have a release date yet?
No, I'm still finishing up the manuscript, and now with the video, a lot of things have, like, I'm looking at things just a little bit differently. Like, I wasn't able to finish it last year when I started it, and there's always a reason why. You know, when you can't quite finish something, and there's something else going on, and I had to leave it, and now I'm able to go back to it with a lot more clarity on, like, oh, these are the things. And a lot of the reflections that I'm getting back from people through the process of the videos is given me, you know, like I was saying, like, you'll get your answers, they'll come. I'm getting the answers to what more to touch on or clean up or leave out for this specific book. And certainly by the end of the year, I will let you know when I know that for certain the release date of when it's coming out, but it'll be 2019.
And then you're going to have all that information on your website too, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I will.
So tell us how the listeners can find you.
Yeah, well, the great thing about my name as an adult is that it's really easy to look up on Google.
Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah.
You know, well, as a child, it was a really tough name. I got made fun of a lot. So, you know, so it was hard as a child to have such a different name, Adapia.
I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, kids didn't think so. But, you know,
I can imagine.
So it goes. But nowadays it's great because you just Google Adapia, Adapia, and I will come up. My full name is Adapia D'Errico. I have a website, adapiaderico.com, and I'm on social media under the same names. Instagram's really my favorite place to hang out. And that's really it. I'm really focusing on writing this book, and I've been invited to do some speaking engagements this year, so I'm very open to doing more of that and more group work. I really like working with small groups and facilitating what I call it's sacred space. Sacred because we're sharing from a very vulnerable place with each other and creating deep, deep healing in these moments of being together in small groups. And it's one of the most meaningful things that I do is women's circles, and this very meaningful work around helping people share their stories and find the healing in their own process. So
did you mention your podcast?
I didn't mention my podcast. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so I have a podcast too, which was another growth edge for me last year. Very, very scary to launch and put myself out that way, but it's called Real Wealth, Real Health. And that podcast came about, and the name came about because I realized that I had gone through these journeys of getting to real meaning through my own misguided perceptions of what wealth and health were. So I used to think wealth was the highest number in my bank account and health was the lowest number on the scale. And the extremes of those that nearly destroyed me in both cases. And those journeys led me to understand that I was seeking real meaning. And so that's what the podcast is about, is about the journey towards inner meaning, soul searching, and how we take that into our lives and align to that in different ways. So,
and I highly recommend it. I've been listening to it and I love it. So, Adapia, if there was one message that you could leave with the world, what would it be?
My one message for the world would be to see yourself with compassion. And before you react or respond to anything, anyone, anywhere, just stop and see how that same thing is true for you, and give yourself the forgiveness and the compassion that you're really looking for. And that'll go a really long way.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I love your energy. I love your willingness to share and your love for serving others. And it totally shines through. And you're such a gift. And I cannot wait for the listeners to hear your story and reach out to you. And I see a lot more in the future for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your podcast and for taking this step even for yourself to show up as more than just your vocation. And may we all do that for ourselves and for each other. So thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to share more about the story behind the video and behind my life, because as you said so well during our time together, we all have a story, and I believe that's what makes us all one community and the same, and that's how we're going to really bring forward this healing in the world, is seeing each other as a little bit of ourselves.
Well said, Adapia. Thank you.
Thank you so much.